Kicked out my parents after what they did to my little daughter. Okay, so this weekend, I invited my parents over for dinner. Now, let me give you some background here because this wasn't just a casual family get together. My relationship with my parents has always been, let's say, complicated. My dad, James, is one of those guys who thinks he's the king of the world, always walking around like everyone should bow down to him. My mom, Linda, is just as bad, but in a quieter way. She's got this passive-aggressive thing down to an art form. Growing up, they weren't exactly the warm, supportive type. They were more like judgmental and critical, especially when it came to me. So, yeah, having them over for dinner wasn't exactly something I looked forward to, but I figured it'd be fine, right? I mean, how bad could it get? Well, turns out it could get pretty fucking bad. My daughter Lily is 10, and she's been taking these keyboard lessons for about 2 weeks. She's really excited about it, and honestly, she's pretty good for a kid who's just starting. Anyway, after dinner, she asked if she could play a song she'd been practicing. You know, just show off a little bit like any proud kid would. She had that look in her eyes like she was ready to impress us all. So, she sits down at the keyboard and we're all watching. I could tell she was a little nervous, but she started playing. Was it perfect? No. There were a few missed notes here and there. She paused a couple of times, but overall, it was pretty damn good for someone who'd only had 2 lessons. I was proud. You could see how much effort she was putting in, and as her dad, that's what mattered to me. When she finished, she looked up, smiling, waiting for some kind of approval. And of course, I started clapping. I mean, what else would you do? That's your kid, right? You're supposed to encourage them. But then I hear it. This loud, obnoxious laugh. At first, I thought maybe someone outside was laughing or something, but no, it was my dad. And then my mom joined in. They were fucking laughing. Not just a little chuckle or anything like that. I'm talking full-on belly laughing, like they just watched the funniest thing in the world. Lily's smile disappeared so fast, I thought my heart might actually break. She looked down at the floor, and I could see her shrinking, right in front of me. It was like someone had just popped her little bubble of excitement and joy. My mom, Linda, looked over at me, still laughing, and goes, "Was that her first time playing?" And then my dad, being the asshole he is, goes, "A dog could have done better than that." A fucking dog? Are you kidding me? Who says that to a 10-year-old? Lily, bless her heart, was trying so hard to hold it together. She quietly said, "No, I've had 2 lessons. It's hard using both hands," but you could tell she was crushed. And of course, that just made them laugh harder. I could feel the anger rising in me. Like, I'm not the kind of guy who flips out easily, but this was too much. I was standing there, watching my parents laugh at my kid, and I just snapped. I got up from my chair, walked over to the table, and grabbed their cups. I didn't even care about being polite at this point. I just said, "Leave, now." My mom, still trying to act all innocent, goes, "Oh, we haven't finished our drinks yet. We want to hear another song." I wasn't having any of it. I said, "No, get your stuff and get the fuck out of my house." My dad started doing this huffing thing he always does when someone challenges him, like he's about to explode because how dare anyone talk back to him, right? My mom, still trying to act like nothing happened, says, "You don't have to be like this. We're just preparing her for the real world. You can't protect her forever, you know." That was it for me. I don't know where it came from, but I just blurted out, "This isn't preparing her for the real world. You're just nasty little bullies picking on a kid. And you know what? This right here is why I was so fucked up as a kid. Now, get out." They looked at me like they couldn't believe what I'd just said. But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. I wasn't going to let them hurt my daughter the way they hurt me all those years growing up. They finally got their stuff together and left. But not without my dad throwing a few more huffs my way. Like he was the victim in all of this. Typical. After they left, I sat down with Lily. She looked so defeated, like she'd just gone through a war. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, and I just felt this overwhelming guilt, like I hadn't protected her enough. I told her, "Hey, you did amazing. I'm so proud of you. Don't listen to them. They're just mean because they don't know how to be nice. That's all it is." She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. So I asked her, "Can you play it for me again? I'd love to hear it." And you know what? She did. She played it again, and yeah, there were still some missed notes, but I clapped even louder this time because screw what my parents thought. My daughter was doing her best, and that's all that mattered. Later that night, when Lily was asleep, I sat there thinking about everything that had happened. This wasn't the first time my parents had pulled this kind of crap. They'd been like this my whole life, always criticizing, always making me feel like I wasn't good enough. But now, Seeing them do the same thing to Lily? It was different. It hit harder. I wasn't going to let them do to her what they did to me. So, after kicking my parents out of my house, I was still fuming. Like, you know that feeling when you're so mad that even after the whole thing is over, your mind keeps replaying everything, and it just makes you madder? That's exactly where I was. Every time I thought about what my dad said or the way they laughed at Lily, my blood just boiled all over again. But I wasn't about to back down. I knew I had done the right thing, standing up for my daughter like that. I wasn't going to let them get away with making her feel like crap. Still, the anger was eating at me, and I knew I had to do something about it. On Sunday morning, I sent them that text, basically telling them we needed a break until they could learn how to act like decent people. Honestly, I didn't expect much of a response, but my dad replied pretty quick. He said something like, "It's your choice, but I didn't raise you to be this precious." Precious? The guy thought standing up for my own kid was being precious? I didn't even know how to react to that, so I just left it. No point in wasting more energy on them. What I wasn't expecting, though, was my sister Amanda to get involved. Now let me explain something about Amanda. She's the golden child, like the golden child. The one who can do no wrong in my parents' eyes. She's always been the one they coddled, praised, and bent over backward for, while I was more or less treated like an afterthought. Growing up, I was used to her getting all the attention, all the praise, all the everything. She was their little angel, and I was just, well, I was there. So, of course, Amanda jumps right into the middle of this whole thing. Monday morning, I get a call from her. I didn't even bother picking up because I already knew what it was going to be about. Sure enough, she leaves me this long-ass voicemail, basically repeating everything my parents must have told her. She said stuff like, "You were so rude to mom and dad. They were just trying to help Lily, and you overreacted. You can't treat them like that. They're our parents." Ugh, classic Amanda. Always defending them, no matter how shitty they were being. I let the voicemail sit for a bit, not even caring enough to respond right away. But by the afternoon, she sent me a text saying, "You're a real piece of work. I can't believe you're acting like this over something so small. Mom and dad were just joking, and you've gone and thrown a tantrum like a child." That's when I couldn't hold back anymore. I texted her back. "A small thing? They made my daughter cry, Amanda. This isn't some little joke. They were cruel, and I'm not going to stand by and let them treat her like that. If you're okay with it, that's your business. But don't come at me for protecting my own kid." I thought that would be the end of it, but nah, Amanda wasn't done. She called me again, and this time, I picked up. The moment I answered, she was off. "You've gone too far this time. You can't just cut them off because of one little mistake. You're blowing this way out of proportion. They didn't mean to hurt Lily. They were just teasing. That's what families do." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Teasing? Amanda, they humiliated her. They laughed at her while she was trying to show them something she was proud of. That's not teasing, that's being a bully. Amanda was having none of it. "Oh, so now they're bullies? Give me a break. You're acting like they beat her up or something. You've always been too sensitive, you know that? This is why you've always had issues with them." I couldn't even argue with her anymore. It was like talking to a brick wall. Amanda had spent so much of her life being their perfect little girl that she couldn't even see how messed up they were. It was pointless to try and explain it to her. So I just said, "You know what, Amanda, go fuck yourself," and hung up the phone. Now, maybe that wasn't the most mature way to handle it, but I was done. I wasn't going to sit there and let her make me feel like the bad guy for standing up for my kid. I knew she'd run straight back to my parents and tell them everything, but honestly, I didn't care. For the next couple of days, I was getting random texts and calls from other family members. Apparently, Amanda had been busy. She'd told everyone who would listen her version of events, and now I had cousins, aunts, and even a couple of old family friends messaging me asking what happened. A few of them were polite about it, just curious. But most of them? Oh, they were mad. I got messages like, "You shouldn't have talked to your parents like that. And family is family, you don't just kick them out." But there was one that really pissed me off. It was from my cousin Sarah, who I hadn't spoken to in months. She texted me, "I heard what you did. How could you treat your parents like that? After everything they've done for you, this is how you repay them? Disgusting." Disgusting? I couldn't believe it. What the hell had my parents told everyone? At this point, I felt like I was in the middle of some messed up family drama where I was the villain, and all I did was protect my kid from their shitty behavior. I thought about responding to all of them, defending myself, explaining what really happened. But then I realized, what's the point? These people weren't there. They didn't see what happened. All they had was my parents' twisted version of the story, and nothing I said was going to change their minds. So, I did the only thing that made sense. I blocked every single one of them. I didn't need that kind of negativity in my life, and I definitely didn't need it messing with Lily. She was already dealing with enough after what happened. The thing is, this whole situation made me realize just how toxic my family really is. I always knew my parents were tough to deal with, but seeing how everyone rushed to their defense without even asking for my side of the story, it showed me that they were never going to change. They were always going to be on my parents' side, no matter how messed up they were. At the end of the day, I didn't need them. I had Lily, and I was going to do everything I could to protect her from the same shit I had to deal with growing up. If that meant cutting off my parents, Amanda, and the rest of them, so be it. Because at the end of the day, Lily is what matters. And I'm not letting anyone, hurt her the way they hurt me. Update 1. If I thought things were going to cool down after I told Amanda to fuck off, I was dead wrong. Honestly, I should have known better. Amanda's always been the type to hold a grudge and stir shit up when she doesn't get her way. But even I didn't expect her to take it this far. It all started on Tuesday, a few days after I kicked my parents out and blocked half the family. I had taken Lily to school in the morning like usual, trying to get back into the normal routine after all the drama. I was feeling pretty good about things. Sure, I was still pissed about how my parents treated her, but I felt like I was finally in control. Like, for once, I was standing up for my kid and myself without letting them walk all over me. But then I got a text from my ex, Emma. We've been divorced for a few years now, and while things haven't always been smooth between us, we're usually civil when it comes to co-parenting Lily. So, when I saw her name pop up on my phone, I figured it was just something about Lily's school or weekend plans. Nope. The text read, "Why is Amanda calling me about you and Lily? She's saying some pretty crazy stuff. Can we talk?" I sat there staring at my phone, wondering what the hell Amanda was up to now. Why the fuck was she dragging my ex-wife into this? So, I called Emma. She picked up after a couple of rings, and the first thing she said was, "What's going on with your sister? She's been blowing up my phone all morning." I sighed, already dreading where this was going. "What did she say?" Emma let out a huff and said, "She's saying you've lost it, that you're alienating Lily from your family, and that she's worried about Lily's well-being. She even hinted that maybe Lily would be better off with me full-time." I felt my stomach drop. Was Amanda seriously trying to mess with custody now? "What the hell?" I practically shouted into the phone. "She's trying to make it sound like I'm a bad dad over one argument with our parents?" Emma sounded a little hesitant, but she said, "Look, I don't know what's going on, but Amanda's making it sound like you're losing control. She said you kicked your parents out for no reason and that Lily's upset and doesn't want to see you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It's like Amanda had gone off the deep end. That's complete bullshit. Lily's fine. She was upset because of what our parents did, not because of me. Amanda wasn't even there. She has no idea what happened. Emma paused for a second, and I could tell she wasn't sure who to believe. "I don't know, man. I just want to make sure Lily's okay. Maybe it's time we talk to her about all this, together." Now I could tell Emma wasn't trying to cause more problems, but the fact that Amanda had gotten her involved was pushing me to my limit. I knew if I didn't handle this right, things could spiral out of control fast. I didn't want to have to go back to court or deal with any custody bullshit because of Amanda's meddling. "Yeah, of course, we can talk to Lily," I said, trying to sound calm even though I was still fuming inside. "But Amanda's just trying to stir the pot. Lily's not upset with me. She's upset because our parents made fun of her. That's it." Emma seemed to relax a bit. "Okay, well, I'm going to talk to Amanda and tell her to back off. I don't want her dragging me into this mess." "Please do," I muttered, running a hand through my hair. "This is ridiculous." We hung up, and I sat there for a minute, trying to collect my thoughts. Amanda wasn't just messing with me now. She was trying to turn everyone against me. But going after custody? That was low, even for her. Later that day, after I picked Lily up from school, I sat her down to talk. I didn't want her getting blindsided by anything Amanda or anyone else might say. "Hey, sweetheart," I started, trying to keep my voice calm. "I wanted to talk to you about something. And Amanda's been saying some things about me and you, and I just wanted to make sure you're okay." Lily looked up at me with a confused expression. "What do you mean?" "Well, she's been telling people that you're upset with me and that you don't want to see me. But I know that's not true, right?" Lily's eyes widened. "Why would she say that? I'm not mad at you, Dad." I smiled a little, relieved to hear her say that. "I know, kiddo. I just wanted to make sure. Sometimes people say things that aren't true, and I didn't want you to get worried if you heard anything like that." Lily nodded, looking a little confused but mostly okay. "I don't get it. Why would Aunt Amanda lie?" That was the question, wasn't it? Why was Amanda doing this? Was she trying to win points with my parents, or was she just being petty because I told her to go fuck herself? I don't know, sweetheart, I said, shaking my head. But it's nothing for you to worry about. I'll take care of it. She seemed satisfied with that answer, so we left it at that. But inside, I was still boiling. Amanda had crossed a line, and now it was time to deal with her once and for all. The next morning, I called Amanda. She didn't pick up, so I left her a message, keeping it short and to the point. Amanda, stop dragging my ex-wife and everyone else into this. You weren't there, and you don't know what happened. This is between me, Mom, and Dad. Stay out of it. I didn't expect a reply, and honestly, I didn't care if she gave one. I'd said my piece. But just to be safe, I reached out to a lawyer friend of mine to make sure Amanda couldn't mess with custody or anything like that. Better safe than sorry, right? By the end of the week, things had started to settle down. I didn't hear anything more from Amanda or my parents. Emma told me that she had talked to Amanda and basically told her to stay out of our business, which was a relief. Still, the whole thing left a bad taste in my mouth. I knew Amanda wasn't done. She'd probably keep running her mouth to the rest of the family, but as long as she kept her claws out of my relationship with Lily, I could live with that. At the end of the day, all that mattered was that I was doing right by my daughter. If that meant cutting off toxic people, even family, then so be it. Because no matter how much they tried to twist things, I wasn't going to let them make Lily feel like she wasn't good enough. Not now, not ever. Update 2. So after dealing with Amanda trying to drag Emma into the whole mess, I thought things would finally start cooling down. I was wrong. I should have known that my parents wouldn't just let it go, especially not my dad. He's never been the type to back down, even when he's wrong, especially when he's wrong. But what came next was on a whole new level of messed up. It was Friday afternoon, and I'd just gotten off work. I was looking forward to a quiet weekend, maybe take Lily to the park or the movies, something chill to get our minds off everything. Just as I'm about to sit down and relax for the first time in what felt like forever, my phone buzzes. It's an email from my mom. Now, I wasn't expecting anything good, but I opened it anyway, thinking it was going to be another guilt trip or some passive-aggressive nonsense about how I overreacted. But nope, it was way worse. The email started out with her usual stuff, talking about how I overreacted by kicking them out, how they were just joking, and how I've always been too sensitive. But then she goes into this whole new level of crazy by saying they want to meet with me, without Lily, to discuss things. Yeah, like that was going to happen. But it wasn't just the request that threw me off. It was how she said it. She started talking about how they were worried about Lily, how she might be too sensitive like me, and how maybe it's because I'm coddling her too much. Then my mom had the audacity to suggest that maybe they should be more involved in raising her. Because according to her, I clearly wasn't doing a good enough job. I swear my blood pressure shot up just reading that. I sat there, staring at my phone, trying to process what the hell I just read. I knew my parents were manipulative, but this was next level shit. They were basically saying I wasn't a good dad and that they needed to step in. The same people who made my daughter cry less than a week ago were now claiming they needed to help me raise her? I fired off a quick reply, something along the lines of, "You've got to be kidding me. If you think for 1 second I'm letting you anywhere near my kid after what you did, you're out of your mind." I hit send and immediately blocked her email. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of another back and forth. But of course, that didn't stop them. The very next day, my dad shows up at my house, unannounced. No call, no text, just shows up. I saw him through the window, standing on the front porch with that same grumpy look he always has when he doesn't get his way. I didn't even want to open the door, but I knew if I didn't, he'd probably just keep banging on it until the neighbors called the cops or something. So I opened the door, and before I can even say anything, he goes, "We need to talk." I stood there, blocking the doorway. "No, we don't. You need to leave." But of course, he wasn't about to just walk away. He steps closer, trying to push his way past me into the house, but I stood my ground. "I'm not leaving until we talk," he says. Now my dad's a big guy, and growing up, he always used his size to intimidate people, but I wasn't a scared little kid anymore. I wasn't going to let him push me around in my own house. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the cops." That got his attention. He stopped in his tracks, glaring at me like he couldn't believe I just said that. Then, like flipping a switch, he tried to play the victim card. "Is this really how you're going to treat your father, after everything we've done for you?" That line right there, that's what set me off. Everything they'd done for me? What, like all the years of emotional abuse? The constant criticism? The way they made me feel like I was never good enough? "Yeah, thanks for all that," I snapped. "Everything you've done for me? You mean like all the times you tore me down growing up? Or how you treated me like shit because I didn't live up to your expectations? Or maybe how you humiliated my daughter last week? Yeah, Dad, real great job raising me. He looked stunned for a second, like he didn't know how to respond. But then, he went right back to being the same old asshole he's always been. You're still living in the past, son. You've got to let it go. Let it go? I couldn't believe he was saying that. Like all the stuff they'd done was no big deal, just water under the bridge. You know what, Dad? I'm not the one who needs to let it go. You need to realize that you're the problem. You and Mom both. And until you do, you're not welcome here. He started to argue again, but I cut him off. I mean it. You're not coming back here. And if you try to pull any more of this bullshit with Lily, I will take legal action. I'm done playing nice. He just stood there for a moment, staring at me like he couldn't believe what I was saying. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel like the little kid trying to please his parents. I felt in control. Finally, my dad turned around and walked back to his car. I stood there watching him drive away, feeling this huge weight lift off my shoulders. For once, I hadn't backed down. I hadn't let him or my mom get to me. That night, I sat down with Lily and told her about the whole thing. I didn't give her all the details, just enough so she knew what was going on, and that she didn't need to worry about seeing them anymore. She looked up at me and said, "Are they going to be mad at you?" I smiled at her and said, "Probably, but I don't care. I've got you, and that's all that matters." Lily smiled back, and that was all the reassurance I needed. Because, yeah, my family might be a mess, but at least I knew I was doing right by my daughter. And that's all that really mattered. Update 3. By the time Saturday rolled around, I was honestly exhausted from all the drama. Between Amanda dragging Emma into the mess, my parents trying to play the victim, and my dad showing up at my door like a wannabe mafia boss, I was just done. All I wanted was a quiet weekend with Lily, just to recharge and get back to normal. But of course, that wasn't in the cards. It was early afternoon, and Lily was in her room, doing whatever 10-year-olds do when they're alone with a tablet. I was in the kitchen making lunch when the doorbell rang. I froze for a second because, after everything that had gone down the past week, I wasn't exactly excited to answer the door. I wasn't in the mood for another unannounced visit from my parents, or worse, Amanda. I walked to the door, half expecting to see one of them standing there ready for round 2. But when I opened it, I was met with a total stranger. She was maybe in her early 50s with this weird, fake smile plastered on her face. I'd never seen her before in my life, but she was holding a clipboard, so my immediate thought was that she was a saleswoman or something. "Hi," she said in this overly sweet voice. "I'm from Child Protective Services. We received a report, and I'd like to talk to you about your daughter, Lily." I swear my heart stopped. "CPS? Are you kidding me?" "What?" was all I managed to choke out. My brain was scrambling, trying to figure out what the hell was happening. She didn't flinch, just kept that same fake smile on her face. "We got an anonymous report expressing concerns about your daughter's welfare, so we need to follow up and make sure everything's all right." I stood there for a moment, stunned. It didn't take a genius to figure out who the anonymous tip came from. This was Amanda. She'd crossed a line, and now she was trying to mess with my kid's life in a whole new way. "Are you serious?" I finally said. "There's nothing wrong with Lily. She's fine." She nodded like she'd heard that line a million times. "I understand this might be upsetting, but we're required to investigate every report we receive. Can I come in?" I knew I couldn't exactly refuse. I mean, it's CPS. If I said no, it would just look worse. So I stepped aside and let her in, my stomach doing flips the whole time. This was the last thing I needed. She walked into the living room and looked around, making little notes on her clipboard like she was some kind of detective. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep my cool, but inside, I was raging. How could Amanda do this? How far was she willing to go just because I stood up to her and my parents? "Is Lily home?" she asked, glancing up from her notes. I nodded. "Yeah, she's in her room." "Would you mind if I spoke with her?" she asked, still in that same sickly sweet tone. I didn't like it, but I knew I didn't have much of a choice. "Sure, I'll get her." I walked down the hall to Lily's room, trying to figure out how the hell I was going to explain this to her. I didn't want to freak her out, but I also couldn't lie to her. She had a right to know what was going on. I knocked on her door and poked my head in. "Hey, kiddo, there's someone here who wants to talk to you for a few minutes, okay?" Lily looked up from her tablet, confused. "Who?" I swallowed hard. "It's someone from CPS. They just need to ask you a couple of questions. Don't worry, everything's fine. Just be honest, okay?" Her eyes went wide, and I could tell she was a little scared, but she nodded and got up to follow me back to the living room. The CPS worker smiled at her and asked her to sit down. I stood off to the side, watching, my heart pounding in my chest. This was my worst nightmare, having someone question whether or not I was a good dad. The worker asked her all these questions: how she liked living here, how often she saw her mom, if she ever felt scared or unsafe. Lily answered everything perfectly, and I could see she was getting a little annoyed by the end of it. Honestly, I couldn't blame her. It must have been so weird for her to have some stranger ask her these personal questions. After about 20 minutes, the CPS worker finally wrapped things up. She thanked Lily for her time and turned to me. "Everything seems fine here," she said, like I hadn't just been through the most stressful half hour of my life. "I'll file my report, and you'll probably get a letter in the mail confirming that the case is closed." "Great," I muttered, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Thanks." She gave me that fake smile again and left without another word. I stood there for a second, trying to process what had just happened. Amanda had actually called CPS on me. She'd really gone that far. I turned to Lily, who was looking up at me, clearly confused. "Dad, what was that about? Did I do something wrong?" I crouched down to her level and put my hands on her shoulders. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. That was just someone being mean and trying to make trouble for us. But it's over now, okay? You don't need to worry about it." She nodded, but I could tell she was still a little shaken up. And honestly, so was I. I knew I had to do something. This wasn't just Amanda being a pain in the ass anymore. This was her actively trying to screw up my life. She'd crossed a line, and I wasn't going to sit back and let her get away with it. That night, after I put Lily to bed, I called my lawyer. I told him everything that had happened, from Amanda trying to mess with Emma to her calling CPS on me. He was pissed on my behalf and told me we had more than enough to file for a restraining order against Amanda. He also said we could send a cease and desist letter to my parents, basically telling them to back the hell off or else. I didn't want to take things that far, but I was done letting Amanda and my parents mess with my life. This was about protecting Lily, and if that meant cutting them off completely, then that's what I was going to do. The next morning, I had my lawyer draft up the papers. It was time to send a clear message. I wasn't playing their games anymore. They could throw all the tantrums they wanted, but they weren't going to hurt my daughter, and they weren't going to mess with my life. Not anymore. Mom abandoned me as a baby for a new family, refused to take me in when I became an orphan. Now she wants this. So, I guess I should start by saying I've never really had a normal relationship with my mom. Actually, calling her my mom feels weird because, to be honest, she was more like a stranger than a parent. She took off when I was just a baby. I was too young to even remember her leaving, but what I do remember is how my dad, Mark, picked up all the pieces and did everything he could to raise me alone. He was my real parent. Always was. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't completely cut off from my mom, Sarah. I'd see her every now and then. But it was like, I don't know, a random acquaintance showing up in your life once in a blue moon and pretending like they care. The court gave her visitation every other weekend, but she rarely, if ever, actually followed through. I remember times when I was a little kid sitting by the window waiting, thinking maybe she'd show up this time. But nope. She'd either bail or drop me off early because she had other plans. The thing that really bugs me is she didn't even try, like, not at all. She would quit jobs just to avoid paying child support. My dad busted his ass working long hours while she was out there doing God knows what. Twice, she even ended up in jail because she didn't pay what she owed. Can you imagine? Jail. For not wanting to take care of your own kid. I heard about it through the grapevine because she didn't tell me directly. I found out from my uncle. It's messed up, right? Anyway, when I was about 6, Sarah met this guy, Phil. He was older than her, maybe by a decade, and from what I could gather, he thought he was some kind of hero for saving her. Whatever. I wasn't really a part of their life. I saw them like 5 times from the age of 6 to 14. Yeah, just 5. And every time was the same. Awkward, forced, and full of fake smiles. I hated it. They would try to act like we were some happy family. But all I could think was, who are you kidding? Phil, though. Man, he was something else. He really tried to force himself into my life. I remember one time I was maybe around 10, and he showed up at one of my school's Father's Day activities. My dad wasn't able to make it that day, but I wasn't mad about it. He always made time for me in other ways, so missing one thing wasn't a big deal. But Phil, being Phil, saw this as his moment. He came up to me like he was some kind of replacement and said, "Hey Jamie, I can step in if you want. I'm here for you." I remember just staring at him, not knowing whether to laugh or scream. Like, dude, no, you're not my dad. You're not even close. I barely know you, and you have no right to act like you're stepping in for him. I was polite at the time, just said something like, "I'm fine," and walked away. But inside, I was fuming. I didn't even tell my dad about it because I didn't want him to feel bad. The worst part? Phil would try to make it seem like I was the one missing out. He'd drop these little comments like, if only your dad had done more for you, maybe you wouldn't feel so distant. Distant? I was close to my dad. He gave me a good life while Sarah didn't give a crap. I finally had enough of his jabs and told him straight up, don't talk about my dad. He's better than Sarah will ever be, and he's done more for me than you can even imagine. He never tried that stepdad crap with me again. The only consistent thing about Sarah and Phil was their absence. They had their own family. They had 3 kids together, and I didn't even know their names until much later. I wasn't invited to family gatherings, birthdays, or any of that stuff. It's like they just erased me from their lives as soon as they had their new family. Losing my dad when I was 14 was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. I mean, it felt like my entire world fell apart overnight. One minute, we're making dinner plans and talking about me starting high school, and the next, he's just gone. A heart attack, just like that. No warning, no nothing. I didn't even get to say goodbye. I remember the day so clearly. The phone call, the panic, the moment when everything froze. My uncles, Pete and Rob, came over right away, but it was like I couldn't hear anything anyone was saying. Everything just became noise. I felt numb, like someone had just ripped my life in half, and I was left with the jagged edges. After the funeral, things moved fast. Faster than I was ready for, to be honest. The house where I grew up, the one my dad worked so hard to keep for us, had to be sold. I didn't have much say in it. It wasn't like I had anywhere else to go. My uncles offered to take me in right away, which I'll always be grateful for. They didn't hesitate. Pete and Rob had always been more like older brothers to me than just uncles, so I knew I'd be safe with them. Still, it felt like I was leaving behind everything I had left of my dad. Now here's the part where my mom and Phil show up again. Surprise, surprise, right? It had been years since I'd seen either of them, and all of a sudden, after my dad's death, they're acting like they care, like they're gonna swoop in and be the heroes. Sarah didn't even come to the funeral, not because she was too devastated to show up. Nope, she didn't have time. Can you believe that? No time to bury the man who took care of her kid when she couldn't be bothered. But Phil? Oh, he showed up. Of course he did. The funeral was over, and I was sitting with my uncles trying to process everything when Phil walked over to me. I remember looking up at him thinking, what the hell do you want? He had that stupid fake concerned look on his face, the kind where you know someone's just doing it for show. He sat down next to me and said, you know, Jamie, you can always come live with Sarah and me. We've got room for you. I just stared at him, not knowing whether to laugh or scream. This guy, who I'd seen maybe 5 times in my whole life, who wasn't even man enough to show up at the funeral with my mom, was offering me a place to live? No thanks, man. I wasn't about to leave my uncles, the only real family I had left, to go live with people who barely knew I existed. I told him no, that I was staying with Pete and Rob, and that was that. Or so I thought. Phil wasn't one to give up so easily, though. He went on this whole rant about how family is important, and how your mom and I really want to be there for you now. Now? Where were they when I was a kid, huh? Where were they when I was sitting by the window waiting for Sarah to show up for her court-ordered weekends? Now they want to be parents? Too little, too late. I shut him down pretty hard after that. Told him I didn't need their pity or their help, that my dad had raised me just fine without them, and I wasn't about to let them waltz into my life now, just because it was convenient for them. Phil didn't like that. His face got all red, and he started sputtering about how I was just a kid and didn't understand how hard things had been for Sarah. Oh, please. I wasn't about to sit there and let him talk down to me like that. So I said, hard for her? My dad's the one who had to pick up the pieces after she ditched me. Don't even try to act like she's the victim here. He stormed off after that, but not before throwing in some passive-aggressive comment about how I'd regret cutting them out of my life. Yeah, sure, like I was gonna lose sleep over not having Sarah and Phil around. Please. After that, I packed up my stuff and moved in with Pete and Rob. They were amazing, honestly. I was grieving, but they gave me space to process everything in my own time. They didn't push me to move on or get over it. They let me be angry, sad, confused. Whatever I needed to feel, they let me feel it. And that's something I'll always be thankful for. The move itself was weird. Leaving my childhood home, the place where I had all these memories of my dad, was hard. Every room reminded me of him, whether it was the kitchen where we'd cook together or the living room where we'd watch movies every Friday night. It wasn't just a house to me. It was the only place I'd ever felt truly safe, but it was gone now, just like my dad, and there was nothing I could do about it. The first night at Pete and Rob's place, I barely slept. I kept expecting my dad to walk in and tell me everything was going to be okay, but he wasn't there. and it wasn't okay. Not by a long shot. I tried to keep myself busy after that, throwing myself into school and anything else that would keep me from thinking too much. But no matter what I did, it always came back to that emptiness. The fact that my dad wasn't there, and he never would be again. And you'd think that after everything, Sarah and Phil would just leave me alone, right? Wrong. Phil called a few more times after I moved in with my uncles, trying to reconnect or whatever. He'd say things like, "Jamie, I know you're hurting, but your mom and I want to help you through this." Yeah, because they've been so helpful up until now, right? One time, he even had the audacity to say, "Your mom has changed. She's ready to be there for you now." Ready now? Now that my dad was gone? Now that they didn't have to worry about dealing with him? I told him flat out, "I don't need her now. I needed her when I was a kid and she wasn't there. It's too late." After that, I stopped answering his calls. I didn't want anything to do with either of them. They had their life, their perfect little family with their 3 kids, and I had mine with my uncles. I didn't need Sarah or Phil pretending to care when it was clear they didn't. And honestly, life with Pete and Rob was good. It wasn't perfect. Nothing could replace my dad. But it was stable. They supported me in ways that Sarah and Phil never could. They showed up for me. They were there, and that's all I ever really needed. By the time I was 27, I thought I had everything figured out when it came to my so-called family. I'd gotten pretty good at keeping my distance from Sarah and Phil, only dealing with them when it was absolutely necessary. The rest of Sarah's side of the family? I didn't have any real issues with them. I wasn't super close to them or anything, but they didn't try to force the whole family thing on me like Sarah and Phil did, so I figured it was fine to stay in touch. They were still part of my life, just on the outskirts, you know? So when my grandparents on Sarah's side invited me to this family birthday party, I didn't think twice about going. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic, just a regular family thing. Show up, say hi, eat some cake, make small talk, then dip out. Pretty standard. Matt, my fiance, couldn't make it because he had work, so I figured I'd just go alone, say my hellos, and get out. But of course, nothing's ever that simple with Sarah and Phil involved. When I got to the party, everything seemed normal at first. My grandparents were happy to see me, and I chatted with a few cousins and aunts. It was chill, nothing weird. I spotted Sarah and Phil across the room, but I didn't go up to them. Didn't see the point. They knew where I stood, and I wasn't about to make things awkward by pretending we were close. So I stuck to the people I was comfortable with, keeping my distance. But apparently, Phil had other plans. I was standing by the food table, grabbing a slice of cake, when I felt someone tap me on the shoulder. I turned around, and there he was. Phil. Right there with that same fake, overly friendly smile he always had. I internally sighed because I knew this was going to be annoying. "Jamie, good to see you," he said like we were old pals. I forced a small smile, mostly out of politeness, and said, "Hey, Phil." I didn't want to be rude in front of everyone, but I was already mentally preparing myself for whatever crap he was about to start. He wasted no time getting to the point. "So I heard you're engaged. That's exciting news," he said, still with that fake smile. I nodded, trying to keep it short. "Yeah, thanks." I was hoping he'd just leave it at that, but of course, that's not how Phil operates. "You know, Sarah and I were kind of surprised we didn't get an invite to the engagement party," he said, lowering his voice like he was trying to be all serious. "I mean, we're your family. I figured we'd be included." I could feel my jaw clench, but I kept it together. I wasn't about to make a scene at a birthday party. "It wasn't a big party, just close family and friends," I said, trying to keep things as neutral as possible. But I could already see where this was going, and it wasn't going to be good. Phil didn't back down. He never does. "Well, we are family, Jamie. Sarah and I have always considered you part of our family, and we were hurt not to be invited. We care about you, you know." That's when I felt my blood start to boil. Care about me? They had the nerve to say they cared? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm. "Phil, I think we both know why you weren't invited. Let's not pretend like we're close." I could see the smile fading from his face. He wasn't expecting me to call him out, but I wasn't going to let him get away with playing the concerned parent card. He looked around like he was making sure no one was listening, then leaned in closer. "Look, Jamie, I've always tried to be there for you, and I think it's time we move past whatever issues we've had. I know your mom wasn't perfect, but I've always considered you my daughter. I'd like to walk you down the aisle if you'll let me." I swear. Time stopped for a second when he said that. Walk me down the aisle? This guy? The man who wasn't even around when I needed someone? The audacity. I felt my hands start to shake, and I couldn't hold back anymore. "Are you kidding me right now?" I said, my voice louder than I intended. A few people nearby turned to look, but I didn't care. You've always considered me your daughter? Phil, I barely know you. You think just because you married my mom, you're suddenly my dad. My dad is dead. He's the one who should be walking me down the aisle. But he can't because he's gone. And you? You have no right to act like you're some kind of replacement. Phil's face turned red. He wasn't expecting me to lash out like that, but I was done holding back. I'm sorry you feel that way, he said, trying to sound calm, but I could tell he was pissed. I've done my best to be a father figure to you, but you've never given me a chance. Your dad didn't do everything right, you know? He kept you away from us, and I think that's why you're so angry. Oh, that was it. That was the last straw. Don't you dare talk about my dad, I snapped, stepping closer to him. He did everything for me, while Sarah was too busy running away from her responsibilities. You have no idea what it was like for him, raising me alone while she bailed. And now you want to come in and act like you're better than him, like you deserve to take his place? Get over yourself, Phil. The whole room had gone quiet by now. Everyone was staring, but I didn't care. I was done pretending. Phil just stood there looking stunned like he didn't know what to say. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, and finally he muttered, "You're being disrespectful. You need to be more grateful for the people who care about you." That's when I lost it. Grateful? Grateful for what? You weren't there, Phil. Sarah wasn't there. None of you were there when I needed someone. My dad was the only one who cared, and now you want me to be grateful to you? You're nothing to me. Nothing. With that, I turned and walked out. I didn't wait for him to respond. I didn't care. I could hear whispers and feel the stares of everyone in the room, but it didn't matter. I was done with the whole thing. Done with Phil, done with Sarah, done with pretending like they were anything more than strangers. Later that night, I got a text from one of my aunts saying I shouldn't have made a scene, that I embarrassed Phil and Sarah in front of everyone. But honestly, I don't regret it. They wanted to play family, but they don't get to pick and choose when they're there for me. They had years to step up and they didn't. So no, I'm not sorry, and I sure as hell don't need them at my wedding. Update 1. After the whole showdown at the party, I thought that would be it. Like, I figured I made my point loud and clear, and they'd back off. But nah, of course not. The texts started rolling in that night, and I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. First, it was my Aunt Carol. She's one of those peacekeepers, you know? Always trying to smooth things over, make everyone happy. She sent me this long message about how I shouldn't have publicly humiliated Phil and Sarah at the party. "You know they're trying, Jamie," she wrote. "Phil's always seen you as his daughter. You didn't have to embarrass him like that in front of everyone." I stared at the text for a solid minute, just shaking my head. Trying? Really? They've had my whole life to try. I wasn't about to feel bad for standing up for myself after everything. So I shot back a reply. If they actually cared, they wouldn't have waited until now to act like it. I'm not playing nice just to make them feel better about the crap they put me through. I didn't get a response from her after that. But then the real kicker came the next morning when I got a call from Sarah. I hadn't spoken to her directly in, honestly, I couldn't even remember the last time. Maybe a year? Probably more. I almost didn't pick up, but I was curious what she had to say after everything. "Jamie, we need to talk," she started, her voice all stiff and formal like she was about to give me a lecture. I sighed, already regretting answering the phone. "What do you want, Sarah?" "I heard what happened at the party," she said, like she wasn't even there. "And I have to say, I'm really disappointed in you. You didn't have to lash out at Phil like that. He's only ever tried to help." I couldn't help but laugh at that. Help? Are you serious right now? The only time Phil's ever tried to help is when it's convenient for him. He thinks just because he married you, he can waltz into my life and pretend to be my dad. He's not, and he never will be. She went quiet for a second, and I could tell she didn't like being called out. But then she did what she always does, shifted the blame. "You know, this attitude of yours isn't going to get you anywhere. You can't keep holding on to the past forever, Jamie. Your father isn't here anymore. Phil and I are." I felt a surge of anger so strong I had to bite my tongue for a second before I said something I couldn't take back. But I was done playing nice. "Yeah, you're here now, Sarah. Where were you when I was a kid? When I actually needed you? Don't act like showing up now makes up for everything you did, or didn't do." She sighed, that kind of annoyed sigh she used to do when I was a kid, like I was being difficult for no reason. "I know I made mistakes, Jamie, but it wasn't easy for me either. I did the best I could." "The best you could?" I cut her off. "The best you could do was leave me with Dad and barely show up for your weekends? You didn't even try. You weren't there, Sarah, so don't stand there and tell me you did your best." There was another long pause, and I could hear her struggling to find something to say. Finally, she went with, I'm your mother, Jamie. You don't get to talk to me like this. I couldn't help it. I laughed again, but this time it wasn't because it was funny. It was just ridiculous. You're my mother? Really? You think that title means something just because you gave birth to me? You lost the right to that a long time ago. You weren't a mother then, and you're not one now. That must have hit a nerve because her voice got all sharp and defensive. You need to stop living in the past. You're going to regret cutting us out of your life, Jamie. Phil's only ever wanted to help you, and you're throwing it back in his face. At that point, I was done. Done with the guilt trips, done with her excuses, done with her trying to make me the bad guy. No, Sarah, the only thing I regret is wasting my time thinking you'd ever care. Don't call me again. And with that, I hung up. I sat there for a few minutes, just staring at my phone, trying to process everything. Part of me was pissed. Pissed that she still didn't get it, pissed that she was trying to make me feel like the villain in this whole thing. But another part of me, I felt free. Like a weight I'd been carrying for years had finally been lifted. I didn't owe them anything. Not my time, not my forgiveness, nothing. But of course, it didn't stop there. Later that day, my cousin Brianna called. She's closer to my age, and we'd always gotten along fine, so I figured maybe this call would be different. But nope. Jamie, I heard what happened. Are you okay? She started. It seemed genuine enough, so I let my guard down a little. Yeah, I'm fine. It's just, they don't get it. They never will. Brianna sighed, and I could already tell where this was going. I get that you're upset, but don't you think you were a little harsh? Phil's been trying, and Sarah, well, she's still your mom, you know? I groaned. Not you too, Brianna. I don't want to hear it. They didn't try. They didn't show up for me when it mattered, and now they think they can just waltz back in and play family. It doesn't work like that. I know, she said, trying to sound understanding. But they're still family. Maybe you could just, I don't know, meet them halfway? I could feel my patience wearing thin. Meet them halfway? How about they meet me halfway for once in their lives? I'm done bending over backward to make them feel better about what they did. Brianna went quiet, and after a few awkward seconds, she just said, Okay, I get it. I'm sorry if I overstepped. I didn't want to be mad at her. It wasn't her fault. But I was tired of everyone making excuses for Sarah and Phil. Tired of people acting like I was the one who needed to fix things when they were the ones who broke it. That night, I sat down with Matt and told him everything that had happened. He listened, like he always does, and just said, You don't owe them anything, Jamie. You've done more than enough. It's okay to let go. And that's when I realized he was right. I didn't need to keep carrying this weight anymore. I didn't need their validation, their approval, or their version of family. I had my own life now, my own future to build with people who actually cared about me. So I blocked Sarah and Phil's numbers. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally breathe. Update 2. I thought that after blocking Sarah and Phil, things would calm down, that I'd get some peace and they'd finally get the hint. But of course they didn't. I should have known better. Instead, they took things up a notch. I wasn't answering their calls or texts, so Phil decided the next best thing was to show up at my apartment. Yeah, you read that right. The guy literally showed up at my front door, unannounced, like we were close or something. It was a Saturday afternoon and I was just hanging out, trying to enjoy a quiet weekend. Matt was out running errands, and I was catching up on some stuff at home. I heard a knock at the door and I wasn't expecting anyone, so I figured it was probably just a package or a neighbor. But when I opened the door, there was Phil, standing there like he belonged. I stared at him, speechless for a second. What are you doing here? I finally asked, not even trying to hide the irritation in my voice. We need to talk, he said, all serious, like this was some kind of intervention or something. You've been ignoring us, and that's not fair. We deserve a chance to explain ourselves. I crossed my arms, blocking the doorway. I've heard all your excuses, Phil. There's nothing left to explain. He looked frustrated, like he couldn't believe I wasn't just letting him in. Jamie, this has gone on long enough. Your mom and I want to fix this. We're your family, and you're shutting us out. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was just so typical of him. Family? You don't get to show up now and act like you've been family all these years. Where were you when I was growing up? Where was Sarah? You can't just ignore someone for half their life and then show up when it's convenient. Phil stepped forward, trying to inch his way into the apartment. But I wasn't budging. We didn't ignore you. Your dad— Don't! I cut him off, my voice sharp. Don't you dare bring my dad into this. He was there for me every single day while Sarah bailed on me. You've got no right to speak about him. I could see his face getting red, and I knew I hit a nerve. But I didn't care. I was done holding back. I'm just saying, he started, clearly trying to keep his cool. Your dad didn't make things easy for us. He never let us get close to you. I felt my blood boil at that. Are you kidding me? My dad didn't make things hard. Sarah didn't even try. And you? You're just as bad. You showed up a handful of times and acted like you were doing me a favor. Don't stand here and pretend like you've been some kind of father figure to me. You weren't there. Phil's face hardened, and I could see he was getting angry now. You need to stop living in the past, Jamie. You're an adult now. You can't keep blaming your mom and me for what happened years ago. Oh, trust me, I'm not living in the past, I shot back. But I'm not about to pretend like you and Sarah have changed just because you're suddenly interested in playing happy families. You can't rewrite history to make yourselves feel better. Phil let out a frustrated sigh and ran his hand through his hair. We've been trying, Jamie. We've been trying to make things right. But you keep pushing us away. You're going to regret cutting us out like this. And there it was. The guilt trip. The same one Sarah tried to pull. It was like they'd rehearsed this or something. But I wasn't falling for it. Regret? I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. What exactly am I supposed to regret? Cutting out the people who weren't there when I needed them? Letting go of people who only show up when it suits them? No, Phil. The only thing I regret is letting you and Sarah back into my life at all. He just stood there, staring at me like I was some ungrateful kid who didn't appreciate what he was offering. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice low and cold. You're going to realize one day that you need us. I shook my head, completely done with this conversation. No, Phil, I don't need you. I never did. And with that, I stepped back and slammed the door in his face. For a second, I just stood there, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't believe it had come to this, but at the same time, it felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally free of all the guilt, all the pressure, all the fake family nonsense that Sarah and Phil had been trying to push on me. Of course, it didn't end there. I heard him knock again, this time louder. Jamie, open the door! He called through the door, his voice angrier now. We're not done! But we were done. As far as I was concerned, we were more than done. I didn't even bother responding. I just walked away from the door and sat down on the couch, turning up the TV to drown out the sound of his knocking. After a few minutes, he finally gave up and left. Later that night, I got a message from Sarah. It was short and passive-aggressive, just like I expected. I heard what you did. You'll regret this. I didn't even bother replying. I deleted the message and blocked her number again, this time for good. When Matt came home and I told him what happened, he just shook his head. I can't believe they still don't get it, he said. You've been more than fair with them. Yeah, well, they're never going to get it, I said. And I'm done trying to make them understand. And that was it. That was the moment I realized I didn't owe them anything. Not my time, not my forgiveness, not even a conversation. They had years to be there for me, and they chose not to. So now I was choosing to live my life without them. And for the first time, I felt okay with that.